What's up, everyone? Aaron Nagler here, PackersNews.com. Combine is done. The Packers reportedly have interest in Muhammad Wilkerson. Everything's going crazy. Cats and dogs living together. Mass hysteria. Seriously, though, it's Monday afternoon, late in the day. We've got the Wilkerson story percolating out there. The Combine has wrapped up in Indianapolis with the defensive backs working out today. And I thought I'd jump on here, say some hellos. Hope you all had a great weekend. I see people chiming in. What's up, everyone? Corey asks the pertinent question when it comes to Muhammad Wilkerson. Will he be late to meetings, though? Obviously, that is a prevalent storyline with Wilkerson's time with the Jets after getting paid, after getting his big deal. Coming off a broken leg, but repeatedly in 2017, being fined and then ultimately suspended for a game by the Jets because of continued tardiness to various meetings within the building. Now, there's a long way to go on this Wilkerson thing. He will reportedly be released today. The official transaction wire isn't out yet, but I expect to either see his name on it either today or tomorrow. And when that happens, he will be visiting the Packers. Tom Silverstein reporting that there is interest on both sides. You got to think, obviously, the attraction in Green Bay is Mike Pettin, his former defensive coordinator back in during his time with the Jets when he was coordinator with Rex Ryan. So, Wilkerson, obviously, there are some red flags there. There is no doubt about it. You have to, take that into account. He can still be a asset to a defense when he is focused. He is an elite 3-4 defensive end when he is on his game. Now, the problem, of course, is that he was very rarely on his game in 2017. He had a nice 3-game stretch in the middle of the season, the Dolphins game, the Bills game, where he did certainly come to play. And even in those games, though, he was not the dominant force that you saw prior to his getting paid. And that's obviously the biggest concern. Now, Pettin knows him better than anybody in the league. If you've read the book Collision Low Crossers, which I all told you to read when Mike Pettin got hired, you will know that Pettin was Wilkerson's biggest fan coming out of college. He really wanted to get him, and they ultimately did there in New York. But, the baggage is very real. The warning signs are very real. Any even attempt to begin to talk about bringing Muhammad Wilkerson to Green Bay would have to be obviously carefully constructed contract-wise. The Packers would have to protect themselves, and they would have to make it plain to Wilkerson in no uncertain terms what is expected of him. Now that said, the guy has been paid. He got his kind of life-altering contract 2 years ago. At this point, I don't think he's going to be signing anywhere. Alexa, shut up. At this point, I don't think he's going to be signing anywhere for the money. I do tend to think the Packers have a pretty good shot here because of history with Pettin, because of Green Bay's buttoned-up, football-first kind of operation. And let's face it, he's not in New York. He'd be in Green Bay. It's a heck of a lot easier to focus on football in Green Bay. So, would he help? Absolutely. If his head's on straight and he's focused, which I think he would be in Green Bay with Pettin watching over him. But the money's got to make sense. It's really going to be dependent on what he and his representatives think they can find on the open market. If they're looking for a big payday, I don't think they're going to find it in Green Bay, even with the familiarity, even with Pettin there. I don't see them shelling out big bucks. But if they can figure out a way, Russ Ball to work his magic to some kind of incentive-laden deal, I think it makes a lot of sense. But the Packers absolutely have to protect themselves. And that has been their history under Ted Thompson. I suspect that's not going to change with Gutekunst calling the shots. Is Alexa watching you? Dustin, I don't know. Alexa is eyeing me up suspiciously. I don't think she's a fan of Muhammad Wilkerson. Let's see. If Wilkerson to Green Bay, first pick of the draft is a DB. Possibly, Adam. I don't think it shuts out the possibility of an edge rusher or even an off-ball linebacker. if Edmonds is there. Let's see. Josh Jackson didn't look comfortable backpedaling at the combine. Yeah, that's fine. He ran what he needed to run. I'm not really concerned about the on-field drills. This tape speaks volumes. I had so many people chiming in today about prospects' stiff hips and things of that nature, and I get it, man. That's why it's on TV. We all get to pick it apart, and undoubtedly that's what the scouts are doing. But I'm going to much rather lean on what his years of college tape say rather than how he looks running indoors in Indianapolis. Do you think they're given? Let's see. Sorry to keep activating your Echo Dot. You think we draft Vander Esch? It's funny. His name has really kind of popped up now around the Packers here the last couple of days. I know there was reported interest, but a lot of that gets overblown this time of year. Maybe an agent talks to somebody, even a personnel guy may drop something, but they look at everybody, and they're kind of interested in everybody. I mean, there are certainly people they'll be kind of, not eliminating, but, this is the time of year where they'll kind of jockey position a little bit along the draft board, dependent on medicals and maybe some interview time, but you got to take all of that with a grain of salt. I mean, I have little doubt that they have certainly expressed interest, but they've expressed interest in a lot of guys. Does Alexa have pass rushing capabilities? Alexa, do you have pass rushing capabilities?
Sorry, I'm not sure.
She's not sure. Will Shields come back? Peter, not to Green Bay. I would be very surprised. I know our Michael Cohen reported that Sam is meeting with the Rams tomorrow and then the Cleveland Browns later in the week. I would be very surprised if Green Bay took a shot at him. And to be honest, I'll be very surprised if he actually gets a contract. I know teams are going to be interested. They're always going to be interested in a guy who can fly. Sam said as much in his interview with Michael. But the man is one hit away from a season-ending injury. After watching that hit in Jacksonville 2 years ago, which looked really innocuous, it's hard to get on board with paying a guy who is probably not going to help you out on special teams, and could easily simply just fall and be out for the year. And the other flip part of it is he's got off-field concerns as well. The arrests last year for marijuana possession, you got to think he's in the program, and who knows? Would have to think it's his second strike there, so his third strike would be a pretty decent suspension. So you're looking at a guy who could very easily be gone like that. It's hard for me to look at it and think an NFL team is going to commit resources there, but. NFL GMs do crazy things every year, so I can't really discount it. Shaquem Griffin at safety. I know I've seen a lot of that today, and I guess maybe there might be a team or two that looks at him there, but I tell you what, man, you put on his tape, and he played at a high level against decent competition, and he flew around and flew to the ball, and the best thing about him on at least the tape I watched is you see him, he's as ready to go in the fourth quarter as he was in the first. He doesn't, he seems to have insane stamina and conditioning. I tell you what, I'm really interested to see if someone gives him a shot at linebacker. And I understand the idea of moving him to safety. He's definitely got the skills. You saw the speed on display 2 days ago. So I think, it's an intriguing idea, but I'm not entirely convinced he can't play linebacker. And I know the hand is an issue, but man, he's certainly made it work at the collegiate level. And I guess maybe he could look at something with a prosthetic, if that's allowed, if the NFL would allow it. But even if not, like I said, he's made it work at a pretty high level already. So I am extremely intrigued to see which NFL team gives him a shot, because the raw tools that he has available to him, his tape is good. So yeah, I'm really fascinated to see where he ends up and how he ends up being used. Speaking of tape, Orlando Brown, bust or steal now? I still think he goes in the first round. Obviously, I think he lost himself a lot of money with his poor combine, both on the field and from what I heard, you know, not great in the some of the interviews. But he's still, I mean, still a big dude who can block people. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So, like I said, I think he's still, we'll see some kind of tumble, but I don't think he goes out of the first round. He's too rare of a specimen. Any chance Green Bay gets Gesicki? I tell you what, it's going to be a lot harder now that he's tested the way he has. I mean, goodness gracious, he put on a show in Indianapolis. I think the tight end out of Penn State, for those of you who may not know the name, he's not much of a blocker, but he's going to be a matchup problem in the NFL. And if he goes to the right offense, he could do damage. Is that going to be in Green Bay? They got to be on the lookout, right? I mean, that position needs help probably more than any other. Maybe outside of edge rusher, but it's going to cost a little more than maybe we were thinking prior to the combine. Would they take him in the second if he's available there? I think that's where they're going to need to take him if they want him. What's up, Chet? How are you, Mark? Thanks for joining us, man. What do you think of Derwin James? Todd, I really like him. He's really obviously incredibly versatile. I know he said at the combine that he met with the Packers. They meet with a lot of people. I think there's 60 meetings they're allowed to take, formal meetings. So you can bet they met with a whole lot of defenders. But I like his game. I think he'd be the case you can make for taking him is his versatility and in Mike Pettine's defense wanting to be able to kind of change your game plan from week to week to fit the strengths of your opponent. I think James would really help in that regard. Now, obviously, I don't think he's going to be in play in the top 10 or anything like that, but I do think he's going to be in play, say, around when the Packers pick 13, 14, 15. And, is he going to be more valuable on their board than one of the edge rushers or even, say, Edmonds? I don't know. That's entirely up to their evaluation, but I think he's definitely in play there at 14. Bring in Talib to fire up the defense. It's a possibility. Obviously, you got to do your homework, both on the off-field and the on-field attitude. But he would help. There's no doubt about that. I guess a lot depends on the money. Let's see. Thoughts on Rodgers waiting for Kirk? Dustin, it only makes sense as far as Aaron Rodgers goes. Why on earth would he sign a deal prior to Cousins, who's going to be the biggest free agent fish we've seen in a long, long time? If Cousins gets 30 per year, you can bet Rodgers is going to want 31. It's really, here's the pitch the Packers are obviously going to make. You can bet that, I tend to think Cousins gets done quickly, right? I think Cousins will be done. They'll have the legal tampering period in a week, and they'll, Cousins and his rep, Mike McCartney, will talk to what sounds like the Vikings and the Jets. What sounds like it's those two. It's coming down to those two teams, and they'll see who's serious and they'll see who's got the real kind of money. And once that deal gets, the parameters of that deal get done, you can bet it'll probably be announced. It'll probably be announced right as soon as free agency kicks off, and there's a good chance that the parameters of the deal will be leaked before then. So we'll have some kind of idea. So, and if we know, they know. The Packers can start kind of constructing something there. And the pitch they're going to make to Rodgers is, look, if we can get this done, we can lower your cap hit, which is set to be, I think, around $22 million this year. We can lower your cap hit. They can get something like $15 million in cap relief by signing Rodgers to an extension. And that obviously gives them a good chunk of change to go out and do some free agent shopping. So it behooves Rodgers to sign as soon as possible so that the Packers can use that cap space. So that's why I think that's the one chance they may have to get something done. But now the other kind of issues holding that up are obviously Drew Brees, which I tend to think gets done before free agency. But then there's also a Matt Ryan extension looming. And Rodgers has every right and probably would be smart to wait and see what happens with Matt Ryan. So, the Packers, like I said, they're going to make the push. They're going to make the pitch. look, give us this cap relief so we can go sign free agents and be aggressive and help you. But it's really, not in Rodgers' best interest to sign right away. It's in his best interest to see how everything plays out on the quarterback landscape. And I expect that's exactly what he'll do. Are they going to sign a free agent or draft a tight end? I think they're going to do both. I think they're going to look at free agency, and I think they're going to look at the draft. I think they absolutely have to, at that position especially. McCarthy acknowledged it in Indianapolis more than once. They need their code for that is they need competition. What they really need are bodies. I mean, they don't have anybody right now except for Kendricks. And I know they're reportedly talking to Richard Rodgers, but yeah, I think they have to look at all avenues. Who's our number one running back this year? Rick, I tell you what, if Aaron Jones comes into camp and shows improvement in pass protection, he'll be your number one guy. I think they love Jamal Williams. I think he'll continue to get work, especially on early downs. But I think if Jones can show improvement in the area of pass protection, he'll be the number one sooner rather than later. I'm not sure if that's coming right out of camp, but he's too talented with the ball in his hands. He's a much better runner. He's a much more natural runner than Williams is. He's a little bit better out of the backfield too. It's just the pass protection that's kept him back. But if he can improve in that area, and we've seen it before, guys can struggle their rookie year and then really improve. If that happens, I think it'll be his job. No, 21 shouldn't be traded. Had a down year is all. I see people are talking about a potential Clinton Dix trade. I can't see that happening, but you never know. The league is crazy. Take one or two more here. Nelson to the slot. The thing you got to remember with the Nelson to the slot stuff, I always kind of chuckle because it's never that, it's never that set in stone. Yes, he did work in the slot last year a lot, usually to get away from premier corners who were pressing him at the line of scrimmage. One of the biggest assets in this game is when he has a free release, especially against zone coverage. He does a great job finding the holes and sitting down, and obviously he and Rodgers have a great chemistry. But the problem is you can't just put him in the slot because there's so much that's required from that position, especially with checks at the line of scrimmage and changing of plays, that he's just not very good at anymore. Especially kind of the horizontal stuff that's gets him out in space, then he's meant to get upfield. You saw as the year went on, his suddenness is just lacking, and his ability, his yak yards after catch, affected dramatically. His ability to break tackles and get upfield off of those kind of swing passes into the flat, it's really diminished. So, yes, he can be an asset in the slot, but that's not all he does. And don't forget, like some of his biggest plays came out of the perimeter. He had his longest reception of the year against the Bears on Thursday night. He was split out wide to the right. He's going to be used all over. They all are. I mean, they all have their strengths and weaknesses, but it's never as simple as Jordy to the slot, because there's a lot that goes into it that Randall Cobb's just better at. Let's see. Any word on the trade speculation from last week? Scott, no. I kind of hit a dead end. If anybody isn't privy to it, last week I heard a name that kind of surprised me. And I can't report it until I get it solid, and I got nothing. So, no. Let's see. Would Thompson even think about bringing Wilkerson in if he was still GM? Yeah, I'll tell you why. If he had Mike Pettin as defensive coordinator, and if the circumstances, being what they are, in that Wilkerson got cut, he's not a true free agent, yeah, absolutely he would. Because he wouldn't count towards the compensatory pick formula. So he's, very much the kind of guy that Thompson would look at. Can Nelson see someone about the lack of speed? Only Father Time. Any word on Rodgers' extension? Nothing yet, Tim. You got to think it's good. We talked about it a little bit earlier in the video. I wouldn't expect anything anytime soon. He's going to let it play out. He's going to let the market set itself. And then he and the Packers will probably get something done. Would you like to pick up Jimmy Graham? Well, I saw a report today from Tom Pelissero at NFL Network saying that Graham will be hitting the market. One of the teams suspected to be interested is his old team, the New Orleans Saints. I'll be very surprised if the Packers get in on that, just because the people are going to throw money at him, and I can't imagine that they're going to want to get into a bidding war for an aging tight end who doesn't block. But his upside is there still. He's still a very good receiver, especially as a red zone weapon. So I wouldn't rule it out, but I tend to doubt that they will go crazy there. What would Roquan bring to this defense? Ben, talking about Roquan Smith, I think sideline to sideline guy. Not sure I like him as much as Edmonds, but I like his tenacity, his physicality, and the best part about him is you don't have to take him off the field. He'd be a true 3-down linebacker. You could pair him with Martinez, and I would probably keep Roquan on the field over Martinez, but you never know. Anything on 42? Nothing yet. I'll be surprised if the Packers bring him back, actually. I keep saying that, which means they're probably destined to bring him back, but I think he can make somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 million per year on the open market, and I don't see the Packers going that high. But you never know. Let's see. What? Who the what? Do you think the Packers get more aggressive in the draft and package some picks and move up? It's a possibility, just because we've never really seen Brian Gutekunst run a draft before, so you can't rule it out. He has said repeatedly last week that he always likes, quote unquote, more bites at the apple, more swings at the plate, and whatever else, whatever other analogy you want to use. So I tend to doubt it. Now, if there's a player he absolutely loves that he sees, say, sliding maybe down to 8, 10 that he didn't expect to, he just absolutely has an insane grade on and says, we got to go get this guy, then maybe they've got the ammunition. They got 12 picks, so maybe they could package something, but I tend to doubt it, especially with this team having as many needs and holes as it does. Will Clay stay in Green Bay? Sarah, I suspect he will, yes. How much influence does Ted still hold? Peter, I can't really say that with any kind of authority, but I suspect not much when it comes to actually putting together the roster. Gutekunst has made it very clear that he will still lean on him as far as his scouting ability, reading his reports. When he has questions about something or if he wants advice, he will go to Ted. But it's Brian Gutekunst's show. He's running it. Which round do you think Troy Fumagalli falls into? Late in the third day, probably 5th, 6th, somewhere around there. Will Vita Vea last until 14? Whew. Good question. My gut says right now yes, just because of all the quarterbacks that go early. But it'll be close, I think. Who has impressed you most in the combine? It's got to be Shaquem Griffin. I mean, that cat, with one hand, putting up 20 reps on the bench press and then running a 4.38, fastest speed for a linebacker in the 40 at the combine since 2003. Kid's amazing. There are a lot of other great performances. Gesicki comes to mind, but that kid was just unreal. I mean, it was the talk of the week. I mean, once it happened, everybody was talking about it. It was crazy. Why is Fumagalli so low? Well, Chris, because he's not a dynamic athlete. He struggles to get separation. He catches everything thrown to him. There's no doubt about that. But there's not a special trait there that you look at and go, wow, he does that better than everybody else. I think he's going to be a solid pro. I think he's going to have a good, solid career, depending on where he ends up. But I don't see, I don't see a special athletic trait that's going to make someone go crazy for him. Now, it's obviously all subjective, and there could be a GM somewhere that thinks, they see something and maybe they take him a little bit earlier. It's always possible, but every scout I've talked to has mentioned the third day, and when I ask reasoning for it, that's kind of I get that repeatedly. That solid player, there's just nothing special that jumps out. over the other guys at the position. And especially this week, it's hard because you see so many like amazing athletes, testing out, and Fumagalli gets out there and, fine player, fine guy, but he's not, he's not wowing you the way some of these other guys do. Now, that doesn't mean much when it comes to where he ends up, where he's drafted, how he works as a pro, what kind of system he's in, who's the quarterback throwing to him, all those things. I say this every offseason, and every offseason I'm reminded how nobody kind of takes this into account. So much of what these guys are about to do in the NFL has to do with situation. They can be an incredible athlete. They can be one of the best, the best hands, maybe a great blocker, whatever. But if they end up in a town where the head coach or the coordinator doesn't really know how to use them, or uses them the wrong way, or maybe their teammates aren't up to snuff, and maybe they never kind of developed the way they should have if they'd been in another system with another coach, etc. With other teammates around them. There's so much that goes into it from a situational standpoint that you can't really quantify. You can't ever, you can play the what if game for every guy's career. So, a lot of this is so kind of trying to project into a situation that you don't have anywhere near the information you need. So that's why when people are talking about, this guy's going to be a starter for 10 years. Well, maybe if he ends up in the right spot. It's so much having to do with situation. I can't even stress that. If I could underline that 1,000 times, I would. All right, everybody. I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you so much for your interest. Can't believe how many people are here. Make sure you're checking PackersNews.com for all the latest. We'll have the Wilkerson stuff. We'll have the Combine wrap-up. We'll have everything for you. So make sure you're there. PackersNews.com for all the latest. Till tomorrow. Guys, have a good night.